Hello, welcome to Digital Rights 101. I'm Iman Malik, and in this Vodcast series, we aim to understand digital rights in Pakistan with the guidance of experts. As the world transitions into a digital era, we believe it is important for everyone to be aware of their digital rights and responsibilities. Hello, I'm Iman Malik and welcome to another episode of This Week in Digital Rights. Today we have Sadaf Khan with us, who is the co-founder of Media Matters for Democracy. So Sadaf, we see a lot of these big tech corporations doing a lot of things that we may not approve of as users. There's several data breaches, people's posts are removed when they ask for help in crisis, and buying their competitors so they can maintain their monopoly. Is there anything we can do to avert this?
So even one of the things, one of the quotes that I learned when I stepped into this whole digital rights arena was that if a service is free, in the end you are the product. So you are not availing the service, but the service itself is using you as a product that they are selling to somebody else. So this is a cost जो हम जो भी free service use करते हैं, I think we should keep in mind whatever we are doing, the data that we are providing them, there will never be 100% transparency about how that data is used. And obviously, even though these are free services, these are billion-dollar companies, and they wield an influence that's actually much stronger than a lot of countries might be able to, wield in world politics, global politics, for example. I think as consumers, that's a very tricky question, because in the end, it's the consumers that are giving these corporations power in a certain way. But the problem comes when you think about critical mass. कोई भी चीज़ change करने के लिए, unless you have a significant number of people either protesting something or demanding something, there might not be any, actions coming forward.
Right.
For example, Google है या Facebook है या जो भी बाकी हमारी बड़ी companies हैं, उनकी अब हमारी economic system के साथ, not just talking about business, about anybody, visibility and everything that is so completely dependent on these corporations, it's very difficult to find a way in which people can meaningfully resist, right? If you resist and let's say you're boycotting the service, then in the end nothing is happening to them because you're one person again. And also, let's say 20, 25 हज़ार 2,000 लाख लोग भी हट जाएं, वो मीनिंगफुली उनकी पॉलिसीज़ को इन्फ्लुएंस नहीं कर सकते. So because of the fact that these corporations are now so deeply integrated into our economy, हम knowledge economy की बात करते हैं, these are holders of knowledge, right? जो हमारी non-traditional economy है. तो उसके अंदर you need very powerful actors to come together and ensure कि corporations के हाथों में इतनी power भी ना हो कि जो human rights violations हो रही हैं, then people are left with no recourse. I'll give you the example of Facebook. Myanmar के अंदर, there has been a really violent political instability going on, genocide तक की बात वहाँ पे हुई है. और जो UN की investigations वहाँ हुई, the UN rapporteur who went to investigate how the disinformation was spread leading to violence, they specifically said in their own report that Facebook completely refused to provide the data that they needed to conduct the investigation. So at that level, if a corporation, that's just a corporation, is so powerful कि वो UN को, which is the convening body for all nation states, उनको उनकी बात भी ना सुने और उन्हें directly मना कर दे, तो फिर you and me as individuals, we can't do anything. But collectively,
but if this is the case, they do not give space for accountability.
Yeah, it's very tricky position to be in because, okay, so it's a bit complicated. There is certain amount of accountability in economies that, जिनका influence आता है. So for example, you gave the example of data breaches and privacy. So all the corporations that are operating in Europe, for example, fall under the General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR जिन्हें कहा जाता है. और उसके अंदर जो European citizens हैं, no matter where they are, their privacy is protected in a very stringent way.
Okay, so all over the world,
wherever जो European citizens हैं, उनकी legal liabilities towards the EU, the Union is very high, और वो comply करते हैं. But the same kind of protections are not replicated in different parts of the world. ज़ाहिर है इंडिया और पाकिस्तान बिल्कुल different तरह treat होते हैं. That's a very large economy, that's a good market. We are not, so we are treated differently. And then there's the question of protections. So even though GDPR की वजह से protections, corporations are basically legally liable to create a certain kind of privacy environment, but we also know that EU also protects its own citizens. वो states की जानब से भी protect करते हैं. In countries like Pakistan, states don't protect their citizens' privacy or different human rights. So we are in a very catch-22 situation कि अगर आप यहाँ protections जो state की तरफ से violations हो सकती हैं उसकी protections बढ़ाए बगैर corporations को state के under liable कर देंगे, so then what will happen? So the chance of being exploited by one party or the other, that remains high no matter what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
So globally, other than the EU, is there a legislation that bounds these corporate big tech organizations in any way, any legislation? And in comparison, where does Pakistan stand in its legal network?
So one thing that we need to understand is all, like, without fail, ByteDance जो TikTok का owner है उसके अलावा Google, Facebook, Twitter, which we see as like the biggest tech
ones.
corporations, they're all incorporated as US companies.
Okay.
So उनके ऊपर directly legally जो law apply होता है वो American law है. And obviously in some of the markets that they operate, they have to register. For example, in the EU they have to register. I think कुछ और countries होंगी, Germany हो गया, Singapore हो गया, कुछ countries हैं जहाँ पे वो registration कराते हैं और फिर उसके बाद certain legal bindings उन पे आ जाती हैं. But again, this is not a good option for countries like Pakistan or India or Bangladesh or Afghanistan, in which people don't trust their own governments not to take advantage of the data that's being housed within their own country. Pakistan में, for example, we cannot push for something like this because हमारे पास data protection law नहीं मौजूद. The data protection laws draft that was tabled, and I know there's a new one which is not public yet, but उसके अंदर, for example, जो पूरी philosophy थी that saw state as the proprietary authority over data rather than citizens. यानी आपका और मेरा डेटा, हमारा डेटा नहीं कंसिडर हो रहा है, वो स्टेट का डेटा कंसिडर हो रहा है. So जब philosophy ही एक लॉ की ये होगी, तो working towards corporate accountability, which eventually will require some sort of accountability of the corporations to the state, that becomes very difficult. So I feel at the national level, Pakistan में civil society भी जो activists हैं, defenders हैं, human rights defenders, they're in a very difficult position क्योंकि no matter what they choose, their rights will be violated by one party or other.
और जो पाकिस्तान में the law that we have, just we have the social media rules that we had, do you think that they are more used to curtail people's freedoms rather than safeguard people against all these corporations?
Yeah, so that's the threat and that's the criticism. जब social media rules जो अब इस्लामाबाद हाई कोर्ट ने दोबारा पार्लियामेंट के पास भेजे हैं, जब वो आए थे, तो मेन जो कंसर्न था वो यही था कि उसका मिसयूज़ और अब्यूज़ कितना होगा. And this is not कि कोई हवा में खौफ नहीं है लोगों को, क्योंकि पैका की यूजेज की जो हिस्ट्री रही है, फॉर एग्जांपल initiating cases against journalists, initiation of cases against human rights defenders, जो लॉ के अपने रूल्स हैं उनको फॉलो किए बगैर डिवाइसेस ले लेना, व्हाट्सएप पे नोटिस भेज देना, नॉट शेयरिंग कि आपके खिलाफ पर्चा किस बात का हुआ है, क्या शिकायत दर्ज हुई है, सिंपली स्टेटिंग थिंग्स लाइक आपको पता है किस चीज़ की तफ्तीश हो रही है, स्टफ लाइक दैट डेमोन्स्ट्रेट्स कि जो आपकी लॉ इन्फोर्समेंट के इदारे हैं, पीका के अंडर FIA, और जो आपकी हुकूमतें या जो भी मुख्तदर हल्के हैं, essentially they have not always been transparent, they have not been accountable, and they have not used the laws with sincerity. तो जब ये हिस्ट्री मौजूद होगी अब्यूज़ की, तो उसके अंदर कोई भी ऐसा लॉ जिसके थ्रू गवर्नमेंट की पावर, गवर्नमेंट का एक्सेस वो ज़्यादा एक्सटेंड होता हो, ऑब्वियसली उसके मिसयूज़ का और अब्यूज़ का ख़तरा बहुत ज़्यादा रहता है.
So, do you feel that since governments and these companies usually work in synergy at times, can there be a law or legislation that can be implemented properly, that can be used for our benefit at the end?
So what I feel, I don't know how practical that is,
Right.
but I think because corporations operate at a global scale, but they have to respond to very local realities at times. So state के level के बजाय हमें कोई global international agreements वगैरह की तरफ देखना पड़ेगा, which ensure that the corporations are responding to the harm that they're creating, and they're proactively working to curtail those harms. क्योंकि जब जैसे ही नेशनल लेवल लॉस की बात आती है, जो टेक्निकली एंड प्रिंसिपली दे शुड बी अप्लाइंग, बट अगैन द एग्जांपल्स आई गिव यू, और ये सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में नहीं, इंडिया में भी आपको ऐसी एग्जांपल्स मिलेंगी, बांग्लादेश में भी आपको ऐसी एग्जांपल्स मिलेंगी, अफगानिस्तान में अभी साइबर क्राइम लॉ नहीं है, बट वी कैन इमेजिन इफ दैट कम्स इन तो क्या होता है. And because technology is something which is very global in nature, for example, अगर कोई वाकई में वायलेशन हो रही है किसी, let's say some woman is being blackmailed and data is required to reach the perpetrator, तो आप पाकिस्तान और यूएस के दरमियान जो लीगल असिस्टेंस ट्रीटीज होती हैं उसके बगैर आप डेटा एक्वायर नहीं कर सकते. दीज आर क्वेश्चंस दैट आर वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स. सो आई फील दैट अ मोर इंटरनेशनल ट्रीटी बेस्ड एग्रीमेंट बेस्ड सॉल्यूशन इज नीडेड. आई डोंट नो व्हाट द शेप वुड लुक लाइक, but I know that at a global level this has to be something that is enforced outside the countries. At least still ज़्यादातर हमारी countries इस level पे आ जाएं कि ये यकीन हो उनकी आवाम को और citizens को कि स्टेट की जानिब से exploitation of rights नहीं होगी.
So you feel that it is possible to protect people's freedom of expression and their right to expression?
I think yeah, but I don't think कि अभी तक किसी ने भी ऐसे experiment किया. So for example, we often give the example of UK कि अच्छा वहाँ पे बड़ी अच्छी consultations हुई and what not. But after 2 years of consultations, they tabled a bill called the Online Harms Protection का law. लेकिन वो भी उतना ही रेग्रेसिव है जितना पाकिस्तान का लॉ होगा, एंड उसके ऊपर उनकी सिविल सोसाइटी के बहुत सारे कंसर्न्स हैं. इसी तरह जर्मनी मूव टू कर्ब मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन आई थिंक, और उन्हें बहुत ज़्यादा हैवी फाइन्स लगानी शुरू की. बट देन दैट एग्जांपल वाज कोटेड बाय कंट्रीज लाइक पाकिस्तान टू से कि अच्छा इसके खिलाफ हमें मूव करना चाहिए. सो आई फील ये नेशनल लेवल जो सॉल्यूशंस आ रहे हैं अभी तक ऑब्वियसली नेसेसरी इन अ वे, बिकॉज कोई ग्लोबल सॉल्यूशन अभी तक नहीं आया है, बट आई थिंक द डिस्कोर्स needs to move towards that. And ऐसा नहीं है कि हमारे पास एग्जांपल्स नहीं है, राइट. सो फॉर एग्जांपल टेलीकॉम्स ने कैसे डेवलप करना है, दैट इज डिटरमिन्ड बाय द इंटरनेशनल टेलीकम्युनिकेशन यूनियन. इंटरनेट का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कैसा होगा, जो ICANN है दैट ऑपरेट्स एट अ ग्लोबल लेवल, सो इंटरनेट के हवाले से, उसके इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के हवाले से, डिज़ाइन के हवाले से, everything has been global. It is not a national country that's defined. आपकी सबमरीन केबल्स हर जगह से गुजरती हैं, and there are international treaties around that govern them. उनके ऊपर नेशनल लॉज नहीं अप्लाई होते. तो फिर जब कंटेंट की बात आ जाती है और हार्म की बात आ जाती है, we should not assume that this is impossible to create a global framework that somehow creates a structure which binds these companies to respond to harms they are creating locally. कि वो कोई कोलैबोरेटिव मल्टी स्टेक होल्डर कंटेंट रेगुलेशन के हवाले से, हार्मफुल कंटेंट की रेगुलेशन के हवाले से, प्राइवेसी के हवाले से स्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट करें जो ग्लोबल साउथ की कंट्रीज़ को भी उसी तरह सर्व करता हो जैसे वो
प्रोटेक्शन दे. Thank you so much, Sadaf, for wrapping everything up so concisely. I'm sure it was very beneficial for everybody watching. This was This Week in Digital Rights. Thank you for watching.